The point-and-click adventure game, Conquistadorio, releases to Steam today, October 20th, 2023, for an unknown price. I'm going to assume it's the equivalent to the $4.99 version that is available via the Google Play Store, as I did not get a response on the price before publishing this review. But before I begin this review, this key was obtained from Keymailer for review purposes. That won't change my opinion of the game in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? So what is Conquistadorio? Well, it's a point-and-click adventure game that has you take an undead conquistador through a series of puzzles in a weird and strange land, as you try to figure out what is going on, and what exactly happened that led to all of this. And from the get-go, the biggest strength of Conquistadorio is the environment and world that it builds. It's a strange one, reminding me of similar experiences such as Heart of Darkness and Neverhood. Between the strange beetle-like creatures that pop up, the alien and UFO tech that you run across, or even some of the weird tunnels using what seems to be a vacuum system, your imagination will run wild in the possibilities of what you can see next and what this world truly is. Exploring it can leave a sense of wonder, but I admit that this strength is one of the lone bright spots of the game. As mentioned, this is a point-and-click adventure game, and the game gives you a series of tasks to solve in order to make progress. Now this does hit a gambit, from attempting to open a door that only opens to the eyes of the beetles in the area, to figuring out how to disable the arrows of a machine blocking your path. Your job is to walk around, picking up various items and combining them along with the environment to figure out how to make progress. The point-and-click elements here are, I'm going to say, below average. Look, point-and-click adventure games always have logic to them that could be hit and miss when it comes to the variety of players out there. I mean, we all think differently, but the best of the genre are able to guide the player without feeling too frustrating. But here, there's a combination of things that really drove me up the wall at times. First, let's talk about the environments and the visuals, which is one of the game's strengths on the surface. For a mobile port, the game's environments and drawings have a level of great detail, showing you thick layers of roots that have snaked their way into the ground, or the crumbling of wood tunnels that twist and turn. Stopping and looking at it does make you appreciate it, despite the fact that sometimes you get different levels of resolution within it, especially when compared to the player character. While the colors are muted here in a lot of cases, it thematically fits with an abandoned and dead world, and doesn't detract from the world itself. In the same breath though, that level of detail and color choices can also be a curse. Like yes, sometimes devices and items in the real world will blend naturally into their environments, but this is a game with that level of detail, and it can be really hard to see what is interactable at times and what is not. I mean, this little place right here, would you think this is something to interact with? Because I sure didn't, not until I noticed that the cursor had changed with the more interactable portion. And even with this part with the fuse here, I didn't really realize that I could do something with it at first. Interactables at times can feel camouflaged, and that just doesn't work for a point-and-click setting. Now, like most games in the genre from a modern perspective, the game does have a highlight system that shows you what you can interact with, but it's not great. Hitting the star over here will highlight one interactable, with a small white dot. No keybind from what I see either. It's lacking. Many games highlight interactables with a small color filter or outline nowadays, and this dot can be hard to see in several cases. Let alone the fact that it only shows you one interactable, and if you want to see them all, you have to keep smashing the star, and hoping you see the dot on the detailed background. Now, if you hit it once, it will show it to you a couple of times if you wait timeline-wise, but having your eyes go across the environment trying to find the dot, it just wastes time. It's frustrating. The actual puzzles to solve, though, are also not exactly the greatest for a variety of reasons. One of the best feelings in puzzle point-and-click adventure games is using items in unexpected ways that make logical sense to get to your goal. It's that aha moment of realization that makes you feel like a smart cookie. That's not how Conquistadorio handles it, though, in my opinion. In fact, if it doesn't literally give you the reason for the item in the item's description, it may not make a lot of sense to use one particular item compared to others, so you end up trying everything. For an example of that, there's this structure that I thought was ice at first, and maybe it is, but I figured, okay, I need to smash it with something to get in what is the middle. Maybe chisel it down with the scissors in my inventory or something. Nope. You need to shoot it with the musket that you eventually put it together. Now, in my head, I'm sitting there going, if you fire it that close, aren't you going to smash whatever is inside of it? It doesn't help that you can't zoom in to know what you were firing on. You just have to do it from the pull-out angle. So you feel like the game cheats you a tiny bit because it feels a little bit off in terms of logic. There's also elements that maybe I just didn't understand the information it was trying to portray. At times the game makes it clear that there's something to focus on, maybe with a small animation of sorts. But here, this weird goop switch, for example, I completely missed whatever gave me a hint to do something with it after I fell off this electric thing. And I sat there for a while going, what do you want from me, game? I'm interacted with everything. Only to not realize that there was a new interactable of sorts. Like, I don't necessarily think that the game's logic is all bad. Sometimes I can see a solution that makes some sense, and I do feel something out of it. It's just, those moments then mirror against the frustrating moments, like interacting with this ramming type vehicle. Like, there are 3 interactable spots in a very small area, where I ended up clicking on the wrong parts at times, let alone the fact that I couldn't actually tell what I was doing. Okay, I pulled that down. Is that a ramp for me to walk up? No, apparently it's used to pull down a ram of sorts, despite the flexibility of it. Now, I knew that I would have to use that in order to get this huge log out of the way, but it just didn't make a lot of sense when I kept on interacting with it. That logic will drive you up the wall and pull down the actual fun parts of the game. The game does have a hint system, which you have to do this weird mini shmup section in order to unlock for one screen, which I guess serves as a roadblock that maybe you'll get frustrated with it and try to figure out the puzzle, but can complete it and you can still get the hints you need. It feels unnecessary, but what I find worse is that the game then gives you a literal step-by-step tutorial on how to do that screen that still requires some problem solving at times, like what the colors mean, but nothing in between. Like, I wanted a hint to the next step, as opposed to the IKEA guide of a solution. Even with other positives of the game, like the atmosphere that's created with the background noise of a desolate wasteland of sorts that's semi-creepy, yet has a tint of exploration built into the noise, it's amazing how during the gameplay, I did get excited. I actually wanted to see what's next and wanted to keep going. How I was enjoying parts of it despite the frustration. But after finishing the game and reflecting on it, how much I really didn't enjoy the overall experience. And I think I know why. Now, if the price of the game is $4.99 like how I expect, then yes, normally I wouldn't be harsh on a game for its length. In fact, that's perfectly reasonable. Like I said, the indie game industry in most cases underprices the games compared to AAA games and what experience you give. My issue is that when it comes to this game, it feels like an incomplete experience, and in particular, its ending. The game just sort of stops when you go through a certain door, and gives a to be continued like message without resolving anything. In fact, I had to do it twice to be sure that something didn't break. Now look, let's put aside the fact that the game doesn't exactly put forward on the Steam store page that it acts like a part 1 in a story. It's the fact that it just, well, there's no satisfaction when completing the game. The cutoff is so abrupt in terms of what happens. You go through a door that you saw in the first 15 minutes of the game, and then you see black. Like literally, it's you walking into a black space and the game just ends. I thought I was being pranked. If you act like this is an act in a play, then the act has to complete to some level of satisfaction. It has to be a crescendo in terms of the story, and this definitely isn't it. Like, the sad part is I want to see more of this world. I want to see the next act in this play. This world has me interested. But I have no confidence that you're going to deliver it to me right now with the way you ended this one. That's acceptable for something like a prologue to get you interested in the story, but for an Act 1? No, I don't think it is. It doesn't help that the story... Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure what the story is. Besides the environmental storytelling and the actual world building, you get brief glimpses of a possible king, sort of, and a faction of conquistadors that invaded this bug-like place, and maybe a scene or two of some information. But it's not enough to make me think that my experience of going through the game was worth it. Normally, in all these reviews, I start with a synopsis of the story and the basics. And really, I didn't do it here because, well, I'm not entirely sure. I think we're trying to discover what happened to us, but the information given throughout the act, in the game itself, I could have theorized and guessed in a generic manner by the game's character design and screenshots. It doesn't give you much substance. And that's the problem. I don't have anything to really bite into. No, juicy lore. No really interesting elements that I can really dig myself into. It all feels very surface level without the world building itself. Look, on a surface level, I want to recommend Conquistadorio. I do, even with my frustrations. If the price is $4.99, it's a cheap game that fuels an imaginative ride that brings back some feelings of childhood wonder and awe. It's beautifully drawn, and there's obviously a lot of love and care put into the game and its visuals. It's just that when it comes to the actual meat of the game and its gameplay, there's so many games that do it better. Not only is it frustrating at times with its systems and its logic, most of the time, you're getting through an area with a sense of, oh thank God that screen is over, rather than a sense of accomplishment. I don't feel smarter in getting through these puzzles, I feel dumber. And the fact is, the game's sense of world and story built leaves me wanting more, but rather feeling like I'm starving than having a satisfying meal and appreciating the next one. Sadly, with all that said, Conquistadorio gets a 55 out of 100, making it a game to pass on. But that doesn't take into account my enhancer system, which takes the more subjective elements of games and tries to match a game to you. If you fall into one of the following categories, add or subtract that score to the main score. If the first digit of your score changes, refer to this chart to see if the game lies in the buyability rating for you. Now, this is a weird one, because while I want to see more of the game, and I could see it being really interesting if we get multiple parts, that sort of means that this game has to have some successful elements to, fund the next part. So yes, there is a subset of people that will enjoy this game, but can I recommend it for most people? No. And it's a good example of my review scoring system in action in the big picture. Anyway, that's it for this review, and yes, this is shorter than most of my other reviews. I may try more of these in terms of the length. The fact is, not many people want to watch 22-minute reviews even though I go into detail, but the fact is I felt it was appropriate for this game. The next review on this channel will not be Time Splitters, like I've said a couple of times. It's a game that I've been looking forward to that I was hoping to get a review copy of, but didn't. Inescapable, no rules, no rescue. I mean, it's Danganronpa adjacent. Did you not expect me to cover it? It may take me a week or two, but that will be the next game. I am still working on Time Splitters, and I may give a video of my setup and some of my game collection. Let me know if you are interested in that in the comment section below, or how I can improve these reviews. I do have a Discord, and I do stream on Twitch 2 to 3 times a week new indie games that you probably haven't heard of. That's how I figure out what games to recommend for the overlooked games of the year. Anyway, that's it for now, and as always, keep on gaming.